Hello, it is really good to be with you today. My name is Tom Schlueter. I'm a pastor at Prince of Peace Church in Arlington, Texas. I also oversee the Texas Apostolic Prayer Network. It's a network that is connecting people across the state of Texas in a very strong effort of bringing forth intercession and action for the kingdom of God across the state. Today we want to just talk about one specific issue, though, that is really on my heart, and we have some friends that I would like to introduce you to here. To my right here is Tracy Bradford. Tracy is with the Texas Eagle Forum, with the Tarrant County and the Dallas County organizations of that. And then we have Mark Herr and Michelle Perkins, and they are with the Center for Self-Governance, and it comes out of Tennessee. And I've got to make the comment right away, and we made this yesterday when we were taking a course together, that Texas has a lot to say thank you to the state of Tennessee. Most of us know the history of Texas, that in the 1830s, Tennessee was one of those states that came to help Texas win its independence as a republic. And so we are very thankful that Tennessee is back on our soil and helping us again to understand what the republic is all about. And that's what we want to talk about today. I want to share first off just a personal experience. Several years ago, the Lord began to speak into my life that He was asking me to get involved with government. And that really scared me. That is something that I'm completely out of the water on. I did not understand it. I was willing to do my minimum part, and that is getting registered, voting, trying to find out about the candidates, but that was about it. So when people start saying, Tom, you really need to get involved with government, I wasn't quite sure what that meant. And so I just started testing the waters, and some of the waters that I started testing was just simply becoming more involved in some of the local issues, trying to get to know city council, developing strong relationships with them, with our school board, and with other people in leadership within our city, and developing prayer networks to help them out. One of the experiences that we have had is that we've been able to develop a very strong personal relationship with the city leaders there in Arlington. And I want to talk about that in a little bit here, especially with you, Mark, on that, and Michelle, of how important it is to start developing those relationships with people. Because we can be intimidated by the role of government, but we need to learn the people, okay? Mm-hmm. And so that's where I started. Well, here last year, as I started getting involved a little bit more at a state level, very intimidated, walking or driving first off 3 hours down to Austin, finding my way into the state capitol. I had friends that was able to do that, but just overwhelmed, tremendously overwhelmed by just the sense of power and structure and not quite knowing what to do with all of that. Yeah. Now let me go back to just this last year. I have become a little bit more involved. I've become to know some of the state legislators. I've learned to sit down with them and have meals with them. And so I got very actively involved with our prayer network in the abortion bills that were coming before the state of Texas last summer. And in the process of doing that, really was a lot of anger was rising up in me of just the process and what was happening with the process. But the part that I want to share is that to help people understand what was going on last year, there was an abortion bill that was going through, HB 2, that was going through the legislature, and it didn't make it through the regular session. And so they had to call a special session. During the special session, it was only one of two issues that was even brought before the legislature. And at the end of it, it became national news because it was filibustered. It ran into issues in the last hours of it trying to be passed, and then it didn't pass because by the time the vote finally came through, it was several minutes after midnight of the end of the session. So another special session has to take place. But this is what I want to share on that, is that in the process of that, my wife and I were on a vacation. I was watching those scenes unfold, web streaming and praying, calling the state to pray, and really just asking the Lord to intervene. And He gave me a word in the midst of that and said, Tom, I want you to close your computer because I've already rendered a verdict of life. And it just really surprised me. And I thought, okay, I can do that. So I closed my computer, was tempted to keep on looking at it, but I didn't. I closed it and went to bed and woke up the next morning, and it hadn't passed. And I was struggling with that till the Lord informed me that he really had taken it to the next level. And so we became very deliberate over the next special session in asking the Lord, well, what do you want us to do with this now? And so we really began just to decree life. And at one point, I was getting a lot of emails, as one would expect when you're leading a statewide network of intercessors, and they were all pleading with me, Tom, please, please, we need to have prayer. We are out here in the rotunda, and we're outnumbered by the opponents, probably 8 to 1, 10 to 1. The opponents had orange on, and the pro-life people had blue on, and so they were just totally outnumbered. And I just had this urgency in my spirit to say, wait a minute, that's not even where the vote counts. Mark, you were sharing a story in a class, and I'm going to introduce here in the moment what this class was all about, but you introduced a story of how you at one time were standing outside the national Capitol in Washington, D.C., and were a part of having the megaphones and the posters and the yelling and the screaming and the marching around and the holding of hands, and same thing was happening there in the state Capitol.
Right.
And I realized in that moment, that's not even where it's taking place.
No.
That's not where the battle is. The battle is on the floor of the Senate. And if I don't have a relationship with those people on the floor of the Senate, both those that would agree with my opinion and those that would be opposed to my opinion, if I don't have a conversation with them somehow, and I know that sounds intimidating, and we're going to talk about that, but if I don't have that kind of a relationship with them, we're losing the battle. Now, that's where I want to introduce Mark and Michelle to you, because Mark and Michelle oversee the Center for Self-Governance. And we had a course that we had at our congregation, at our church yesterday in Arlington. And I want to use this opportunity to promote what they're doing. And I want Tracy to jump in on this because she also was in the class. And I want them just to start talking about this experience of what Center for Self-Governance is all about, because it helps people at the very grassroots level, housewives, students, plumbers, people that just are doing their everyday lives, realizing how they need to engage at a grassroots level what needs to take place. I keep on mentioning grassroots because there was a word spoken over the state of Texas several years ago, and it simply said that Texas is going to have a grassroots movement that is going to rise up within the state, that is going to cause a shifting to take place even for the whole nation. And I believe what we're experiencing here with your ministry and what Tracy has been doing and what I've been doing as a pastor from my pulpit, that's going to be a part of that shifting. So Mark and Michelle, let's start with you. Would you introduce yourselves a little bit more and what you're doing, but just begin to share your heart, because this is a heart issue.
Right.
I'm Michelle Perkins, and I'm just like you. I am a mom, a wife. I am from Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and frustrated beyond belief back in 2009, all wrapped around an issue called healthcare. My husband's a physician, and I watched his spirit breaking, and I mean that in the literal sense. Government intervention and business intervention and the crushing blow on the businessman, the entrepreneur in America, was what was walking through my door every night. And, hi, honey, how was your day? Shifted dramatically. And it became this was my spirit and my capitalist little plan I had, and it became something I can't do anymore. And I have to do this now. And I watched in that moment something we have called a dream go out the window. And you talk about a fury from within. I knew I had to do something.
Right.
And then the something began. So that's 2009, and those somethings have now stacked around the room, and it's not important who I am because I'm you. I'm nobody special. And that's the message. I almost don't even like to introduce myself because you're not going to replicate you and you. It doesn't matter who you are. We show you that everyone is supposed to do what we're doing, and we can all do it together, and it works. But I will say I'm Michelle Perkins from Tennessee, for the record.
Or Michelle Perkins from Tennessee. And I want to re-emphasize that. Totally disengaged from what we would classify as government involvement.
Absolutely.
Political involvement.
Zero.
I mean,
Zero.
were you voting even?
I was voting.
That's it, though.
But by ticket. I had decided what party I was a member of, but I hadn't even done my homework on that.
Yeah.
I'm just supposed to be. So I'm talking 0 to 10, and I gathered the tools around me at the time. They're all there, trust me.
And what amount of percentage, I know this might be a guess, but what a percentage of people would you think of, especially, let's say, within the Christian community that should be active in this, are in the position that you were in? It's a tough question, but it used to be a tough question for me. Now it's a very easy question for me to answer. I meet very few people along our walk that I think are doing what they can and should be doing. We're not doing all we can and what we should be doing. Yet we're here having this dialogue. We all need to do what? Improve. We have a choice as believers, right or left. And it's the people that are stuck. They aren't turning right or left. They're stuck. Yeah. And I can get into a whole hour of what puts us in that stuck position. Yeah. So, not enough. Yeah. I believe the last statistics I saw, I know they were single digit.
Yes.
As far as Christians even registering to vote.
The registration is
and
not
then
there.
A lower percentage of those that actually even turn out to vote.
And there was I had a whole show, a radio show in Nashville about that statistic. Yeah. And it is shocking, but there was also the dialogue that it was driven by a protest. Yeah. And that's something to be looked at, but say who you are.
Yeah, Mark, tell us, because that's what I want to ask you now is, it's more than just a vote, too. It's more than registering. It includes that. That would be the minimum amount that we should do. Right. But Center for Self-Governance teaches us about some things and about some key people in American history that say otherwise. Right. That number one, we are not to be just sitting around thinking, well, this is for the politicians, the professionals to do that business, and we'll just, whatever they decide we'll do. That is not what our government's founded on, and that's what you teach. So tell us, what's going on?
My ancestors immigrated here based on religious persecution from the State Church of Germany in the 1700s. Settled in Pennsylvania as Mennonites. My great-great-grandfather was the first Mennonite bishop in Pennsylvania. Then my father's grandfather split from the Mennonites and became a Methodist, and eventually I was raised in the Baptist, and I lived in Korea for 7 years, and we worshipped with the Presbyterians.
Did you ever ask, well, who am I?
Right. Eventually, I had to go through this great discovery of who I am as a person, and that's what the founders used. People like philosophers like John Locke, for example, who believe that we discover ourselves, and the role of government is to protect the environment so we can discover. So I'm fortunate to have been raised in a nation where I could discover myself and join with great patriots and Christians and others from around the country to kind of discover what it takes to keep our republic. And for me, I didn't vote until late in life here. I'm new to this process. I just wasn't raised in an environment where we talked about politics. We talked about the Bible. My parents made me write the book of Proverbs with my right hand because I chewed on my nails. So I know the book of Proverbs more than I knew the political system. That's just the way it was in my household. So what I'm realizing is that it's not so much we need to vote, and that's part of the casserole of liberty the founders gave us to preserve and to serve to our fellow citizens. But beyond our vote is our participation in government, and that was that was the most significant realization I came to, was my lack of participation as a citizen within this country. I'm reaping the benefits that we've been given, this inheritance we've been given, but I wasn't doing my part to preserve my inheritance.
I'm going to stir the pot here.
Okay.
Because I'm going to tell you and I'm going to tell the people that voting, registering, participating, we've got to do that because we are a democracy. That's what a democracy does. It votes. It's majority rule.
Right.
And we are a democracy. That's what we've been hearing for years and decades. I mean, that's all I remember hearing is that the United States is a democracy. And people are already going to say, well, where is he going with this? Because that's what we are. We're a democracy. And we even try as a nation to make other nations democracies.
Yeah.
Got a feeling that's not true, is it?
No, the founders, when they structured the Constitution, they specifically brought together failing formulas of governments with successful formulas of governance over not just 100 years of experimentation with the 13 colonies, but even beyond that with William Bradford's Mayflower Compact, the Magna Carta, John Locke's philosophies, Plato's Republic, all the way throughout all of history. They put it together and they came up with a republic. So in Article 4, Section 4 of the U.S. Constitution, where the U.S. is required to guarantee to all the states in the Union, including Texas, a republican form of government. Even in the Texas state constitution in Article 1, Section 2, the people of this state pledge to preserve this republican form of government. So George Washington in his first
Republican, that means Republicans and Democrats, right?
No, absolutely not. That's a political system to get people elected to office based on votes. But the form of government is absolutely critical in understanding what the founders gave us when Benjamin Franklin told a woman with no political rights who could not vote and she could not hold office, he told her it's a republic if you can keep it. The secret there is in what a republic is supposed to do. It's to balance the majority rule with minority rule, where the majority's will prevails and the minority's rights are protected. It's meant to find balance between complete anarchy, where it's just like
does
lightning.
Their own thing.
It's like lightning, right?
Yeah.
Versus complete 100% control over all of this power.
Which
over
would
all
be a
this
tyranny.
Tyranny and anarchy. What's the balance between the two? So we don't live in a democracy. We live in a republican model of government to balance those two things. A democracy shifts the balance and puts the controls 100%, almost 100% in the hands of the majority. So you end up losing the minority rights. You take the balance out of the minority rule, and it shifts to the side, and eventually the thing, if it's not brought back into balance, it'll collapse.
That's good. That's good. We need to know the name. It's Mrs. Powell.
Yes.
And of course, Michelle is a Mrs. Powell.
Right.
Tracy here is a Mrs. Powell, and I guess I'm a Mrs. Powell as well.
That's right.
Mrs. Powell was simply, as you already described, a person that approached one of the founders after the Constitution was formulated in 1787 and said, so what did you give us? I mean, what did you come up with? I mean, what was your solution to this problem?
Right.
And the answer was a republic if you can keep it.
Yes.
And you've already made that point, is that she didn't have any rights.
No.
I mean, Michelle has tons of rights now that Mrs. Powell didn't have.
Right.
She could not vote. She very rarely would even have her opinion heard as a woman. She couldn't hold office. I'm not even sure they could even own property.
Yeah. Just depended on the state.
It depended on the state. But yet, here she's being told, you can keep this. Explain that a little bit more.
Yeah, so it's a rhetorical question coming from Benjamin Franklin, was signer of the Constitution. This is just a few minutes before he walks out, and he's the one who made the comment about the president's chair, and he said, I've always often wondered, is the sun setting or rising on a new nation? I see now that it's rising on a new nation. So he walks out of the Constitution Hall, and he's approached by this woman, Elizabeth Powell from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, who was very, very familiar to the founders. They interacted because her and her husband entertained them at their bed and breakfast in the Powell House in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, still standing today. And she asked him a very important question, and he responded with a very important rhetorical question. Hers is, what have you given us? Not what have you given anybody else, but what have you given us? A monarchy or a republic? Okay, at the time, there was a lot of momentum.
Because they were under a monarchy at that time.
They had overthrown it.
They'd overthrown it.
And so they were the people were actually trying to lift George Washington up as a monarch, right? So there was that kind of atmosphere during that time. And instead, what his answer is what we've given you is it's a republic. If you can keep it, well, how is she supposed to keep it if she doesn't have the vote and she doesn't have the office? It just begs the question that the women of today have the right to vote in office, but it seems like with language we're fundamentally transforming from a republic into some sort of new type of government. But it's a republic if we can keep it, despite our vote, despite the office. It's our participation in government that was the secret. That all of the founders, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, they all referred to these different types of things related to citizen participation in government.
Oh, that is awesome. Now, the Center for Self-Governance is a team. That's the best way I know how to describe it now. Yes. It's not an organization. It's not a building. It's not an office. Yeah. It's a team of people because it is about people. This is about empowering, bringing something, lighting something in our heart. You were using the word before, a pilot light. It's lighting that pilot light in us, the same light that the founders had,
yes,
the same light that Benjamin Franklin said Mrs. Powell needed to have, and to ignite that light in us again that says, look, this is not a tyranny. This is not anarchy. This is not even a democracy. This is a republic. Now, we need to learn how to do it.
How to keep it.
We need to learn how to keep this, okay? Mm-hmm. I'm going to shift for a little bit here. I want to come to Tracy.
Sure.
I want to share this first. Tracy has helped me tremendously. She may not even know this, but she's just provided opportunity for me to come into situations where I can meet people. Now, it's up to me to meet them.
Sure.
She can't tell my story. She's not supposed to tell their story. I need to communicate. She did that just this last Saturday, this last weekend. We had a fair in the area that we live here, where politicians were there and candidates were there from the Republican Party. But she invited me into that situation. And what was interesting about it was not speeches. It was not a political campaign thing. It was an opportunity with a coffee in one hand and a donut in the other hand to just simply converse with people that were running. And it was thrilling to me. There was no pretense. I was hearing about candidates and their kids and about their struggles, and I was able to pray with them on some issues that just were very personal to them. It was not about, I knew where most of them stood. That was not the issue. The issue is, I want to know you. I want to know these people because I may be voting for you, probably will be voting for you,
right.
But I want to know who you are. Not so that I can get anything out of you. I just want to know you. Mm-hmm. You're representing me when you go down to Austin, just as the same as a city council. You're representing me when you're meeting there in the chambers in Arlington.
Right.
I want to know who you are so that I want you to know who I am. Not my issues, not my agenda, but who I am. And she was one of those that opened the door for me to do that. The first time, though, that I actually met a state legislator was down in Austin. I was going to an event. I was sitting in the auditorium there in the Capitol, and this man comes up behind me and takes my shoulder and says, "And who are you?" And I introduced myself, and I said, "Well, who are you?" And I realized, oh, he's a state legislator,
yeah.
And I didn't know who he was.
Yeah.
And I'll announce, it was Phil King out of Weatherford. And he was the one that said, let's find out who we are about each other. He knew we're not in the same district, but he was so interested in me being there that he wanted to learn me. And I'm thinking, now if he's willing to do that, why am I not willing to do that?
Oh, yeah.
So I went back to him a few minutes later and I said, are you serious? And he said, definitely. And I said, well, let me take you out to lunch next week. And so we met and had lunch and started conversing. I share that because sometimes we don't even have to make the first step. If you just put yourself in a place,
Yes.
you're going to meet people. And you're going to meet the people that you need to meet. And Tracy, you've done that so well. Just share a little bit of your story with what Texas Eagle Forum is about, but also just about your personal experience, about meeting people and what that's done.
I'm a little different in that I have been passionate about government and politics from as long as I can remember. My dad was the kind that from little, he would take us to the voting booth, and it was such a big deal. And so I always had a heart for that, but then as I got married and had children, and I have 7 kids, and I homeschool, and it's like, well, you're not going to be going out working for candidates. You're not going to be, well, I thought that. Actually, it was at a Cindy Jacobs conference about 5 years ago, and we had just had our 7th child, who was at the time 1. And at that point, God put on my heart, it's time. And during that time at home, I'd still done things. I'd always tried to stay involved. But you start to realize you have to be very careful because you become the one in your group of friends that are like, oh no, it's going to be politics again.
Oh, yeah.
And so you try to communicate things and get them involved, but you also realize you have to pull them in and encourage them that they are to participate.
Yes.
One of the flashpoints they know with me, and my husband will usually go, is when they say as Christians, we're not supposed to be involved with that. And I think for me, when getting involved with Eagle Forum and God really put in my heart, it was time to move. Last year, I was asked to lead legislation and go down to Austin, and my husband and I went every week. We did the on your own dime. You drive down there, you spend the night, you get up, you spend the day, and you're working around your kids' schedules, but it's what you do because you feel committed and convicted. But we really prayed about our strategy. And what God put on my heart was you're not going down to pass a bill. You're going down to build relationships on
That's
both
good.
sides of the aisle.
It's good.
And we went to every office that we could. We went to every senator's office. My husband and I walked those halls every week, and we did build relationships. And what happened when it came time for the pro-life issues in the summer is we had made connections. Now, we got to see some of the ugly side of being down there, and we, you talk about the issues. We did lose the language. So part of building this relationship is starting to be able to communicate on a similar language and starting to identify some of the words that we can agree on. And when it came time to go down in the summer, we did go down for a rally, and probably one of the most memorable moments in my life, aside from having children, was standing on the steps with our state legislators and the senators and worshiping. Mm-hmm. You're standing on your Capitol steps singing Our God is Mighty to Save with thousands of protesters screaming at you and a line of state troopers. And I'll never forget that because I took 20-something women, we took 20-something women down there with Eagle Forum. They're engaged. And it wasn't just being there with the protest, because I do know what, you can be angry and throw something at an issue. But this was praying. We were down there to pray. We were down there to smile at those protesters. We were down there to speak and tell them why we were there. And when we were down there for the bill signing, and through that whole process, I would get texts from legislators, pray for this. We had the one who wrote the legislation. She told me just the other day at that breakfast, you would be sending us emails every week with the specific prayers that we needed. That was God's strategy. And what I feel like y'all have brought, and what is so exciting to me, is this stuff we're walking out during this last year. I'm thinking, nobody else is doing this. I feel like I'm running upstream. And then to sit in the class yesterday, I'm like, okay, we're on target. This is your plan. This is unfolding.
This is it.
And it's been put into a classroom. It's been put into an educational tool. But it is different. It is about building relationships. It is about, I talked with one of my sons today, step back, and if there was the best candidate for the Republic, but he didn't line up with, now life, I don't vary on the life issue, because that to me speaks to everything. But there are particular issues that will educate. Don't just decide, well, I can't vote for him because it's not best for me. What's best to save the Republic? And then go about educating. And one of the things we found out going down to Austin was what a privilege. And the other thing that was really neat, and I will again agree with y'all with the building the relationship, we would go into these offices and pray with them. Or we would just simply say, "How's your day?
How's your day?
What are
That's
you
good.
working on?" And they would, I'll never, the first time I asked one of those guys that, they were like, "You're asking me something, you're not here to yell at me, you're not
Yeah.
here to demand something." And so I wholeheartedly, my whole drive is to educate people, activate people, motivate people. You want them to be engaged, but they have to take action. And this is so beneficial because I
Yes.
think it will help. I left there very excited. I was maybe, I don't want to say this the wrong way, I wasn't quite as overwhelmed as probably sometimes people would be, because
My
it was
brain
like,
is totally rewired. With a few
sparks-
wires
still
still
sparks
sparking
coming out.
coming out.
well, one of the gals with us, we said, we didn't get a group picture, and she said, my eyes would have been crossed. But that's a lady who said to me, "I will never talk to a state rep. I will never go in there." And we had to drag her out of an office because she wouldn't quit talking the first time she went down there. And so it's letting
That's good.
people know you do have a gift. Each person brings
That's good.
giftings
That's good.
and resources, and we are charged by God to do this.
We are charged by God to do this. I was there the same day we were worshiping. And one of the representatives that I know, I called him up a few days after the vote did pass, and just to talk to him and thank him, because I know he was part of the process. And he told me, he says, "I cannot recall in all my years," and he's been in legislature for a couple decades now, and he was so thrilled about how connected the church and government were in that hour. Now, that very statement drives people crazy.
Yeah.
Because we have this mindset that has been placed on us that is not true, but yet we've bought it, that you do not put these two together. There is a separation of church and state. We're not going to get into that debate. It's just not true, though. That is not, Thomas Jefferson was the one that coined the phrase, and we've taken it totally out of context. He was talking about the government coming in and can't force you to do a certain religion, like they had experienced with the Church of England. Right. He says, we're not going to go there, okay? But we do have the freedom of religion. We do have the right to engage totally in the government process as ordained by God. And that's what I have been able to realize in my own life, is that we've called them the manacles that are put on our brain by society to put fear into us, that we don't dare talk about politics within the church walls or at church meetings or whatever else. I'm sorry, I'm not there. We're going to talk about these issues. It's important for the church, especially the church, to give, especially the church, the righteous ones, the called out ones of God, to engage in this. And yet we have been so fearful of it. So really what I want to kind of close with here is I want us to just really express that to people, to say, get engaged. Now, we've already missed one deadline here. Now, I've been promoting it through email in every venue that I could, but yesterday was the last day you could register to vote. So if you hadn't done that by yesterday, you're already out of the process, at least for the primaries, which are in March. Mm-hmm. But that's where you got to start. You've got to at least say, I'm in. Right. I'm going to participate. But tell us a little bit now more about the Center for Self-Governments, because it does go way beyond that. Mm-hmm. And I know some people may be thinking, oh my goodness, I can't be a Tracy Bradford. You know, I don't have the time to go down to Austin. I don't have the time to do that. Yeah. Well, we're not just talking about Austin. We're talking about maybe city council or school boards, or it's a republic at every level. Yes. Not just at state or federal level. It's a republic at every level. Yeah. Would you? Can I add something? Yes, please do.
Because it is a sacrifice.
It is.
It is.
I have to say, I don't have time.
Exactly.
When you're homeschooling and raising children,
there's
not time. And every person I talk to, you can look and see whatever their lifestyle is or their schedule is, we're loaded. But is it worth it? And it's a sacrifice, and you make...
Thank you, Tracy.
You make the effort
Do you want to keep or lose your republic? That's
Thank you.
the bottom line.
That's the bottom line right there.
If you want to, if maybe you don't want to lose it, but you have to realize that in order to keep it, you're Mrs. Powell, and Mrs. Powell didn't have a vote. So those of you who didn't register to vote, you still can exercise and wield your power to control instituted government and keep your republic.
Tell us a little bit more about that. Tell us about the class, and then we want to give people the information that they need. I will share that we've had our first series of classes in Texas. Tennessee came to the rescue of Texas once again, and we had classes down in the Houston area, classes in the Austin area, and then a class here in the Dallas area in Arlington. Right. And we're looking at our second set of classes. I'm going to let you kind of share what the outline of the course is, but there's several levels, but we're going to have our next set of classes coming up in March again. So tell us, though, again, what is it about? What are the classes all about? What are they teaching you? What are you going to be teaching them? And then we'll talk about how do they get involved.
Maybe I'll try to give the big picture. Okay. Michelle can give the details. She develops all our classes and students. Our vision is simple. We want to see the citizens of the United States exercising their civic authority to inform the discretion of their fellow citizens in terms of instructing delegated authority and controlling their instituted governments. And all of those institutions are right where you live: your school board, your city council, county commission, state legislative districts, your congressional districts.
I don't even know the language that you're using, Mark.
Exactly. And so all of this language,
gotta learn it.
All of this language is buried in our training program, and the training program is a sandbox for you to come play in and experiment and learn for yourself how to keep your republic, because the citizens don't know how. So we educate you on how, then empower you with the tools, and then enable you to use those tools to keep your republic.
Well said.
Well said.
I like that. It seems a little complex, I know, at this stage, but it is a perfect analogy. Sandbox, think of children. We all came to the sandbox as children yesterday, and I still consider myself a child because every time I sit through a class, this is important to note, it's interactive. Something comes out every single class that I didn't know before because Tracy brought her treasure, you brought yours. Right. That's giving me a gift, is it not?
Yes, it is.
And we all have gifts. You're a facilitator, obviously. You can bring people together and make them feel comfortable. Your gifting might be different. I challenge everybody, because I had to do this within myself, is to find my God-given gifting, because I was struggling with the word sloth. That is what was downloaded into me one Sunday. Defining sloth, it seems very straightforward biblically if you Google whatever means you want to do. But to me, that meant I was sitting on something, God-given, treasure. I'm his daughter, but I'm not doing anything.
You were a couch potato.
I was the unexercised citizen. So it's no different than a muscle you don't use. Yeah. What would a physical therapist say? It's going to atrophy and become weak. I had become weak in faith. I'm focusing on my family because we would have 11 children between us. If you do the math, we are busy women. And I have all this stuff going on society puts on women and mothers and wives, and the social activities that the children create by themselves is enough to overwhelm you. But sloth hung on me like chains. And I said, I am breaking out of that word, because I wasn't. I felt disobedient because I knew I had a gift, similar to Tracy's. I could talk to people. I don't have his gift. There'd be no point in having two historians on this couch.
And I don't have your gift.
You're pretty good at it.
But I don't have your gift. I don't have Tracy's gift.
But that's the point. We become teams. So discovering your gift is one tiny piece of our training. And then I called it playing musical chairs yesterday. The networkers tend to sit at one table, the researchers tend to sit at one table. No different than we're in grade school. The popular kids are at a table. It doesn't change that much as we grow into adults. We got to mix up that room, people, and we have got to start having some very different conversations, work those muscles. The founders gave us things to exercise with through public education, abdicating my power. There's several things you could put in that blank on the sentence, what happened. We could discuss 3 days why we are here with this problem. But until you say, you know what, we're here. We're here in this situation. We do not feel like we are controlling elected officials in government. They are controlling us. If you can say yes to that, you're ready to go. Debate all day long.
Good.
But come to class and we take your passion, your gift,
That's right.
and we drill it to some action with teammates. You cannot do this alone.
Cannot
I
do
shared
this
an
without
experience
team.
with you yesterday. We were having supper together, and years ago we did this with our prayer network in the city,
Yes.
where we found out that if you just tell a group of 20 people pray in a corporate meeting, sometimes it bogs down and doesn't go anywhere. But if you start going around the table and say, well, Michelle, what is your passion in prayer? And you say, well, it's for healing for people. And Mark, yours is I want to pray for governmental leaders, and you want to pray for family. And then you find the other people that want to pray for family, and other people that want to pray for government, and other people that want to pray for healing, and put them all in their little thing, still in a corporate setting. All of a sudden, the level of intercession rose because you're actually dealing with something out of your passion. Yes. Your passion may be local government, it may be the education system of your school board. So you don't ever have to go to Austin unless your school is in Austin.
But remember in class, one of the first steps is even identifying that.
Yeah, what is your passion?
What's your passion?
What's your passion?
That's an exercise in class.
What's your passion
Well,
is.
I have 15 passions because I'm mad about this, this, and this. Well, that's great. Pick one.
Let's pick one.
And that's going to keep your battery charged.
Okay. Amen. Tracy, just a last summary point of what was the class, what did it mean for you yesterday?
For me, I thought two things. I took two other women who are in our group and are more new to the process and different giftings. And so we work on a board together, so it was exciting when we came away to see what they're engaged about and what they want to do with that. And we had several other friends who texted and said, okay, can we do this? You know, we're already driving home, and we had two more people say, okay, we want to join. But for me, it was confirmation. It's confirmation God is moving.
Yeah.
That's good.
He is moving in this area. He is bringing, I think, a like-minded leadership or a team to start and filter it down, and it will spread. And that's so encouraging.
That's good.
Because if we do feel like there's just a few of us or you're alone, even if you're working with people, but I left very encouraged. We're on the right track.
Yeah.
We are on the right track.
Yeah, we don't look at the outside.
That's right.
It's faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word.
By the word.
And the word, and that just my final thing to say, this hit me so hard, is we had lost the dialogue.
We've lost it.
And I was praying about it, and God just really put in my heart, oh wait, you have the word. The word is God.
That's right.
And he said, the words I speak to you are spirit and are life.
That's right.
Wisdom, courage, and grace. We will get there.
Exactly. That's it.
We have to learn the language given from God through the founders and say it's our own again.
It's ours to keep or lose.
Absolutely.
It's ours to keep or lose.
Because I had lost it.
And friends, we want to encourage you as much as we can encourage you for the state of Texas and even beyond. Because the Lord has told us that Texas and other states have heard this as well. We're going to affect what happens in the nation. And that's because the Lord uses all parts to affect something. Mm-hmm. But in Texas, we want to affect what's going on in the state. And it's going to be a grassroots movement. We want you to become involved with this. We want you to register. We want you to vote. But we also want you to be a Mrs. Powell. We want you at your level, wherever you are, to get engaged, to find out what the issues are. What's the passion on your heart? And we want you to get involved with this process. It's just in its birthing stages in Texas. So you can say, hey, we're on the ground floor of this. We want you to contact Mark and Michelle. you can go to their website, which is TN, which is like Tennessee, tncsg.org, and you'll find out all the information you need to know about what the classes are about, what the vision is about, the principles, the calendars, and everything that you need to know. Or you can go to our site, which is TXAPN, TX like Texas, APN.org, and find our contact numbers, and we'll get you the information as far as where the classes are going to be held as well. But we want you to get involved. We believe that this is the cutting edge, frontline thing that the Lord is asking us to do to release God's kingdom in the state of Texas and to keep that which we've been entrusted with, which is a republic. It's not just the Republic of Texas, it's the republic of our nation as well. We want to keep this. They're pumping their fist because I've learned the language. I had to learn it too. We want you to learn it. So please be in touch with us. God bless you.